Welcome back, CSE 3200 Yukon Stores. We're in video 3 of chapter 13. We are going to implement unidirectional data flow architecture. That way we can manage and update our data as it goes back and forth between our database and the user. So unidirectional data flow is an architecture pattern that's become popular, and it works fairly nicely with flow and state flow. So here's the idea. We have data coming from the database, and we have updates that the user could make by interacting with our user interface with all kinds of different views like checkboxes, which we have, or we have an edit text field, but it could be other things like radio buttons or sliders, drop-down menus. There's a whole lot of ways that the user could be presenting data that perhaps we need to react to and have it interact with our database and save the data. So data is constantly coming from the database to the user interface, and from the user interface, the user is making some changes, and that's got to go back to the database. Now, when it goes back to the database, it goes back as a state. We then have to interpret that state to see what changes we need to make to the database. So the source of our state for the crime detail fragment is going to be a view model. We have to create that class. It's going to hold a reference to a state flow, and it's going to update the user interface whenever a crime updates. As the user edits the details in the current crime, the crime detail fragment will send that user input to the view model. After updating the crime's data, the view model is going to send the updated crime back to the crime detail fragment. This loop is going to be continuous and always be in sync. We won't ever have two different pieces of changes that are racing to see what our data is going to be. So one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to go into the crime detail fragment, and there's some code that we're no longer going to need. We're going to get rid of the crime var declaration, the var crime declaration, and the fun on create. When we do that, we're going to get some errors for what we've deleted in on create, and we don't need those anymore. We're going to get rid of those as well. All right, crime detail fragment. We're getting rid of the tag, which we never got to work anyway, so I'll comment that out in case I want to come back to it. We are going to get rid of our crime declaration, and we're going to get rid of the on create. Now, we've already got our errors once we got rid of this, but our crime would have been declared here, and we are going to get rid of all these lines that have the crime in them. So let's get rid of the on create, and the log function was already in there. We'll get rid of this line. And this is going to be a while before we get back to these lines, so they're going to live like this for a bit. We will keep the is enabled is false. Button's not going to work for a while. And there we go. Okay, so we cleaned that up. So we are going to make our class crime detail view model. Right-click on com, big nerd ranch, etc. New Kotlin class. Crime detail view model. Looks okay. We are going to have it be a subclass of view model. Alt-Shift-Enter. Private val crime repository is equal to crime repository.get private val underscore crime You might guess what we're doing here because this is what we did at the end of chapter 12. Mutable state flow of type nullable crime. Looks like we need an import. Nope. Maybe it's a misspelling. Yep. Now we need an import. Okay. This is going to equal mutable state flow. It needs a default value. We don't have one when this is created, but the default needs to be supplied regardless, so we're going to put in null. Val crime of type state flow. Same type of input, a crime which is nullable. It will equal underscore crime as a state flow. Dot as state flow. This is going to need an import. And in case you couldn't guess, in case you had forgotten, why we're doing this is we do not want to present a mutable state flow to the user. We only want the unmutable version, which is the state flow. And we will just give that to them using the mutable version that we can change, but with the as state flow so they can't change it. We are going to need access to the crime's ID the moment that the crime detail view model is created. There's a number of ways that you could try to do this, but one way you might think of is that you would pass in the ID as part of the constructor. However, we don't have access to the view models constructor, and we never have. We've always been using a property delegate, the by view model. So even if we had access to the constructor, by default there's only two, one that has no arguments and one that has a single argument, which is the save state handle. However, there is a way that we can add additional arguments to the view model, and it's through a class that would implement something called a factory. So we will make a class called viewModelProvider.factory and make it use this interface. Okay, so we're going to go into crime detail view model, and I am, upon initialization, going to launch the view model scope. View model scope dot launch, curly braces, need an import. And we will go underscore crime dot value is going to be equal to crime repository dot get crime. It is not listed as an option, which is curious. So I'm going to go check that out. Go crime ID. Okay, so the crime ID I expect would not register because we're not set up to take in that parameter at this point, but I did expect to get crime. So if I go into crime repositories, I see get crimes here, and I have named this identically. So this needs to go away, and now that's taken care of. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to put in, as part of the crime view model parameters, crime ID, lowercase, crime ID of type UUID. Okay, that needs imported. All right, so now we need to get access to that value through our crime detail view model factory class that we're going to create now. Class crime detail view model, and parentheses, but inside those parentheses we are going to have private val crime ID of type UUID, outside of the parentheses a colon, scroll down a bit, view model provider dot factory, and in curly braces. Now this part gets complicated. Override fun and of type, and then we're going to give it a generic type, and it will be of type view model. Give it a generic name, of type view model. Outside of the curly braces, create, and then parentheses, model class, our variable name, colon, of type class of T objects. Outside of the parentheses, a colon, return that type. And then curly braces, return crime detail view model, passing in crime ID as T. All right, so that's the way the crime view model is going to get the job done, through crime detail view model, through a view model provider dot factory. Looks like we got a problem here. Let me check this out. All right, I see it. I have the very same name as the class. I meant to put factory here. Okay. The next thing we have to do is go into the crime detail fragment and access our factory using the property delegate. Okay, up here near the top, private val crime detail view model, colon, crime detail view model by view models, and we're going to get rid of those braces, and these are parentheses. Nope, they're curly braces. Okay. By view models, yes, okay. And then crime detail view model factory, passing in args dot crime ID. With that, you have everything set up to start displaying your crime information, but just like we did in Chapter 12 with the crime list fragment, we're going to use the repeat on life cycle to collect the crimes data through stateflow. So we're going to make some changes in our crime detail fragment. So let's see, after binding.apply, which we have taken out a lot of the code just recently, we're going to go below that and put in code that we've seen before from the end of Chapter 12. View lifecycle owner dot lifecycle scope dot launch, inside the curly braces, and it's not giving me curly braces, so we'll get rid of those. Give ourselves some space. View lifecycle owner. dot lifecycle dot repeat on lifecycle, and then inside the parentheses, lifecycle dot state dot started. State is capitalized, started is all caps. Outside of those parentheses, curly braces again, enter to separate the curly braces, crime detail view model, dot crime dot collect, and curly braces again, crime, arrow, nullable crime, dot let, and then we are going to call a function. We're just going to separate this so that it's a little bit more readable. We haven't created this function yet. We're going to say update UI. That's going to be the name of our function, and inside the parameters, it. All right, somewhere around here, we are going to create our update UI function, private fun update UI, parameter crime of type crime, curly braces, binding dot apply, curly braces, if crime title dot text dot toString is not equal to crime dot title, curly braces, crime title dot set text to crime dot title. That'll have to listen to constant updates because this is an edit text and we can be updating character by character by character. Outside of that if statement, crime date dot text equals crime dot date dot toString. And crime solved dot is checked equals crime dot is solved. All right, I think we're good with that. Now we're going to run the app, and then we'll select a crime and see if we can get the crime's details to display on screen. If you remember at the end of the last video, my logcat wasn't working, so I wasn't 100% certain I was getting the ID. If this works, I know that I am. So crossing fingers. All right, no errors. And we'll go to toxic lunch. And we do see toxic lunch in copy room, which just goes to show you that for some reason my logcat simply isn't working. But good news, our app is. So I'd like to point out at this time that we have only set up one half of our unidirectional data flow. We have now registered from the crime detail view model to the user interface, but now in the other direction, once the user interface is interacted with, we need to be able to save that as a state back in the crime detail view model. Once we finish that up, we'll then need to update the database, and this chapter will be all done. In crime detail view model, we are going to make an update crime function. Fun update crime. Inside the parentheses, we'll call it on update. It'll be of type crime. This crime will be itself a lambda. And underscore crime dot update old crime, another lambda function, will be set to old crime nullable dot let on update inside the parentheses it. All right, let's see what went wrong. This may just need an import. No, I don't think so. How about if I hover over on update, type mismatch. Oh, I see it. These should be curly braces, not parentheses. You can only use it inside of the lambda. Okay, now we need to make a couple more changes. We're going to go into the crime detail fragment and hook up the user interface using the new function. Crime detail fragment. Under the binding.apply, where we had gotten rid of most of the functionality of these lambdas, we're going to put that functionality back in. Crime detail view model.update. .update crime. Inside curly braces, old crime. Arrow. Old crime dot copy. Title is equal to text dot toString. Looks like I got an error. I'm going to come back to that in a second. We're not making any change to the button. It's still just going to be there doing nothing, but we will try to apply some functionality in the onCheck change listener. Let's see if we get the same type of error as we got when we did the text box. Crime detail view model dot update crime. This time it's selectable. Last time I don't think it was selectable. So, old crime, and then the arrow, and then old crime.copy, and in parentheses is solved is equal to is checked. All right, no errors there. That's curious. Did I have a spelling mistake here? Yes, I do have a spelling mistake, and it says capital C. Okay, now we should be able to run the app. Let's see, let's go into Toxic Lunch, and if we hit solved, okay, does that save? Well, let's go back. No, it does not. But that is a problem for updating our database. which is going to happen in the next video. So I will see you there.